Let's set the record straight. I believe that together we can make America great again.
The Centrally Biased Podcast.
Keep an eye on the recorder.
Oh, yeah. From the last time, that whole fiasco. In case you didn't know, we had a great, 3-hour podcast in the can, and then it wasn't.
Yeah, it was a 3-hour podcast turned into an 8-minute short skit, apparently.
All right, so what's going on in Barry's world?
Barry's world. Well, Barry discovered how much he truly despises adults not being adults. Like, for instance, so earlier we had to go pick up the stepdaughter, and she was staying with a friend. And the friend's mom took all the girls out shopping for the daughter's birthday. And anyway, they were out shopping, and so we were out running errands, and we're like, okay. And we'd asked the mom prior, before they even left her friend's house to go shopping, hey, were you going to be done by a specific time so that you can meet up with us in Arlington over by the Parks Mall, right? Because that's about halfway. We were trying to be, standing in the olive branch, just saying, hey, we'll meet you about halfway or so, Yeah. And she's like, yeah, that'll be fine. And about 3:30, we're sitting at the Parks Mall texting my stepdaughter and asking, hey, are y'all gonna make it here by 4? And the mom is totally very just scatterbrain. I mean, not even
aloof.
Oh man, I'm telling you, push come to shove anyway, I ended up getting the phone number from the stepdaughter, texting the mom directly saying, hey, if you can't make it here by 4 o'clock, where can we meet you to pick her up? So we ended up having to drive all the way to DeSoto. And then she was late there too.
Crazy.
I just don't get it. I mean, is the millennial malaise or mishap mindset just eking over into adults? Is this how they're trying to, I guess, not correlate, but what's the word I'm looking for? Communicate with their kids, is to be just as aloof and scatterbrained as them.
Possibly. I mean, but even before cell phones, there were some people that were always 30 minutes late to anything.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's aggravating to have adults not acting like adults. You ask an adult a direct question, you expect a direct answer, right?
Well, it's like my students. They're very aloof. I have I have assignments. Let's do this. I explain it in detail. And then they look at me like, ain't got a clue. So
yeah, but they don't have a clue. That's the problem.
That's funny, I guess. I mean, it's almost like they don't want to be there, but it's like, you're paying for this. If you don't want to be here, go do something else.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of them are like taking student loans to be there, and now they're going into debt. And I'm like I remember, I knew, I remember listening to a guy named Eric Thomas. Okay, he's like a motivational speaker. And he was talking about how when he went to college, he was like, I'm paying to be here. And then he would get an email from the professor saying, hey, we're not having class today. And he's like, whoa, I'm paying to be here. So if you're not going to be here, you're going to at least tell me what we're doing or supposed to be doing, so I can at least be taking care of that business while you may not be in class and we may not be physically in class. I'm paying to be here. You owe me that time. But students now, it's like, oh,
free day. Yeah. I mean, it's like, you can sit there and say, hey, go over these chapters, do this, do that, but they're not.
Well, it's like, I know you teach photography, and you're always probably telling your students, hey, go out, take pictures, go out
shoot.
there, go shoot. And then when they come into class, I bet you 90% of them are like, I didn't shoot anything.
Yeah, and I'm like, how hard is it to shoot? You have the camera, just take photos of anything. And they don't. But like, going back to kind of what we're talking about, adults not adulting, is I have one student in my class, he's retired Air Force. Or, I think it's retired. No, I don't know. Something Air Force. He's getting a GI Bill.
You mean Chair Force, right?
I'm not going to discriminate. But
I will.
But the Marine, right? So he's saying this is like his third time trying to go through school, and that normally when he gets the money, he gets it and then like drops out. And I told him, I was like, look, man, don't waste your GI Bill. You have it. Like, if school's not for you, find a trade. Go do something. Learn something that interests you. And he's just like, yeah, maybe. I'll give it a shot. See what happens. And it's like he himself hasn't decided to adult, and he's been through, a great number of things.
Well, that'll tell you right there, Air Force. If you airmen are hearing me, you got another airman over here just propagating the lazy theory of Xbox soldiers. Because no, I'm serious. You know what? It's funny you say that, and you tell me it's an airman, because I knew a lot of airmen in the Marine Corps when I was deployed to Afghanistan, and these guys were the laziest motherfuckers I've ever seen. I mean, this dude, I kid you not, this staff sergeant or tech sergeant, I think it was a tech sergeant actually, comes rolling into the COC asking me some he wanted to figure, they were trying to get another link connection put inside their little command post over off the flight line. And this dude walks in with these Oakley boots that are not issue, against regulations. They look like tennis shoes, and I'm like, motherfucker, really? How you gonna walk up in here around a bunch of Marines, and you're gonna ask us looking like the slob? But hey, it's laziness, man.
I mean, don't they have a set standard of dress regs they're supposed to go by as well, or are they loosey goosey?
Your guess is as good as mine, bro. This guy walked in looking like he was just Jenny back on the block.
But shouldn't he have been reprimanded by somebody, or was he the higher up that he had nobody to answer to?
Okay, so he's like I think he was a tech sergeant, which means he was almost like, I want to say I'm probably going to butcher this because I don't pay attention to airmen ranks, because they take tests to get promoted, whereas we actually have to do work and physically prove ourselves to be promoted. Yeah. I just know it wasn't his first day on the job. Let me tell you this. I want to say he's probably had at least one re-enlistment underneath him. So, yeah, I would think
he should know better.
I would think he would know better, but it all boils down to self-drive. I mean, it's just like Eric Thomas was talking about. I'm paying you for me to be here.
Self-drive. What is it? I saw a podcast recently, and this guy's name's David Goggins, I believe. Holy shit!
Right?
Yeah,
the Joe Rogan one.
Yeah.
Man, that dude was crazy. He shit all on his back doing that.
I mean, what was it? He had to run 100 miles to run 100 miles, and he hadn't ran in like what, years?
Well, what was funny is him talking about how he contacted the guy for the run,
the event, yeah,
and he's like, I'm gonna. He told him, he's like, okay, all right, and he calls him back up after he does that run. He does 110 miles in 19 hours.
Crazy.
And what does the guy say to him? He goes, but you didn't run 24 hours. And it's 24 hours, and he's like, whoa.
Yeah.
But yeah, this dude was like pissing blood, and he still did it
and shitting himself in it. But also, what, he went through Navy SEALs 3 times because of medicals.
Yeah,
buds because of medicals. Like, I can't even imagine going through that once.
You could not be Tom Clancy and write this motherfucker story, okay? That dude is just like pure self-drive. And the funny thing is how he talks about that self-drive was built out of negativity. Yeah. How he was constantly, I'm not going to use the terms he was using, but people were denigrating him. Yeah. He was even denigrating himself, and
because he used to be obese or just overweight, something like that.
He was overweight, and he ate poorly, and then he would start trying to get back in shape, and then he would stumble. He'd start eating poorly again. Then he'd recognize, I've fallen, and it was all about him driving himself to do whatever he had to do, and that dude's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, if you could learn how to bottle whatever that motivation, self-drive is, and could sell that, holy shit!
They call it Red Bull.
Red Bull. No,
Oh wait, that's Chuck Norris's piss. My bad.
hilarious. But no, man, like, so what is it that, some people have this drive to be the best they can or to try things that are far beyond their ability, and then you have other people. I hate to, cast doubt on my sister, but you give her one little pebble in a road, and she breaks down.
I think it's it's probably how we really raise the next generation, because we had this idea, we wanted everything to be better or easier for them. But the problem with that, I let me put it in another kind of put in another light. All right, so all these people going to Walmart and stuff, or going to the store, and you see those sanitized wipes, and they start wiping down their cart, okay? And basically because they don't want to catch any bacteria, right? Well, let's go back into the early 1900s. There's this thing called polio. But who was getting polio and falling prey to it? Rich people, right? Why were rich people? Because they were the most highly hygienic, so they weren't exposed to a lot of bacteria, so they had weak immune systems, right? I mean, that's basically the gist.
I mean, I don't
polio epidemic.
I don't know the history, so I can't agree or disagree with what you're saying.
What I'm saying is okay. So all these the higher society kids were falling prey, like FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He contracted polio because that level of society was, well, one, they had indoor plumbing, they bathed all the time, they were very clean, whereas the poorer element of society did not contract polio. Why? Because they were exposed to it all the time. They were outside in the dirt, bacteria. They had strong immune systems. Now, where I'm going with this is what we have done with the youth is we have attempted to remove every barrier to their failures before they ever fail. And by doing that, we have not reinforced their need, their desire to get past that hurdle. Whereas when you and I were going through school, we got an F on a fucking math test, we got an F on a math test, and we had to redo it. We had to go back and figure out
if we got the option to redo the test.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly. That's what my point is now we knew that if we didn't get the option to redo that test, we had to do better on the next test to make up for that F. Therefore, we had to go back and learn what we failed at, so that when the next test came along, we could pass not only that test, but the elements of that test of the next test. So, well,
you're getting a little away from the mic there.
So basically, what I'm getting at is I think when you talk about you throw a pebble in the road and she stumbles, it's partly because we as a society have attempted to remove the hurdles, and so when they hit that pebble is as huge as a mountain. It's a bigger hurdle than they'll ever face.
Yeah.
And because of that, now they have lost the ability to persevere.
Yeah. Well, I guess going back to David Goggins, like that used to be him. He would come to that pebble and he'd stumble and then give up. But then something in him finally said, "Fuck it."
Well, I believe he said that for him, it was that he had to he mentally had to say, "You got to get this done. This has to happen." I mean, it really is truly mind over matter. And if we no longer mind, then that hurdle no longer matters.
I guess you're right, yeah. Because he also couldn't swim, and then he went out for that too. I mean, well, that's all rolled up into buds, and he had to learn to swim on the spot. Like, that's crazy. Like, I thought you had to pass some basic swim test to even get that far.
There is a basic qualification you have to take to even go into buds, but I think with Goggins, what he was talking about, and we actually do swim quals as well. The very same swim quals he's talking about and it's about buoyancy, your ability to float. Well, people with less body fat percentage have a very low buoyancy rate, so they sink easier.
He was negatively buoyant, but he also has a genetic and background why he would be bone dense heavy.
Yeah. Well, what I was saying is like, for instance, I'll tell you, I noticed when I was going through, we had levels for your swim qual. All right, now if we had some guys that were going into a field in the Marine Corps where they would actually be flying in planes, like in actual, like, not pilots, because this was enlisted.
But they're like in the cargo holds.
Yeah, exactly. And so what they have to also go through is SEER, survival is escape. Wait, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. Okay,
Yeah.
there's the SEER school, but not the same SEER school that Buds does. There's different levels of SEER.
Yeah.
But one of those things is in order to go into that field, they have to get a swim qual level 4, which means they have to be able to remain buoyant and swim across a certain distance in a pool in a certain level of water with full camis, boots, a weapon, and a full pack.
Jesus.
Now, remind you, then you're talking about your own buoyancy.
Yeah.
So this is where I think Goggins was probably getting is that he was probably full geared out, and yet with his with his negative buoyancy already, his natural negative buoyancy, it made it hard. But yes, like you said, he overcame that. He pushed himself.
Yeah. I mean, because he even had a fear of the water for a while.
Yeah, and that was a great. By the way, that was a great podcast, dude.
What is it? If you can find it, it's Joe Rogan. You can just search David Goggins. But I think he's been on other podcasts, and just listen to that dude talk. Like, whoo! He makes me tired just listening to him. All his accomplishments that he's done.
Yeah, like I said, I could listen to that more than once. It's pretty motivational.
Yeah.
But I mean it.
So how do we? I guess from my standpoint as a teacher, how do I try to infuse some of this get over it mentality and become a better student or better whatever they're doing? Because that seems to be the biggest problem is I can't get them to actually care.
Let them fail. Hold them accountable. That's one of the big things, and you even see it in corporate America. I know I've got plenty of guys that I work around that the reason they are the way they are, the reason that these guys are at the level of production that they are is because they're not held accountable. Same thing with your students. If you don't hold your students accountable, I mean, I get that you don't want them to fail, but don't fall into that helicopter parenting aspect of saying, I don't want you to fail, so here, let me give you this chance. Man, maybe it's time you just...
they know the rules. They know how I operate, and I tell them that I base the class on themselves, how you started versus how you finish. And if they improve, then they get better grades as they go. But if they stay stagnant, then I keep them at the same, D, C level. And I very rarely have an F just because it's very hard to actually fail a photography class. Not showing up is the only way to, not pass.
Now, with you saying that,
but there's work involved, and I have it set up to where I check, I just check work and I talk to them about what they've been shooting, what they've been doing.
Well, let me ask you a question. If you were a boss, like you ran a company, and the only way that you would ever fire somebody is if they just didn't show up for work, how profitable or productive do you think your company would be as a whole?
I mean, I get where you're coming from, but I mean, it's not like unlimited chances, but for the most part, they show up and they do work, but they don't go above and beyond, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They do the required amount of work to get by. And in corporate America is that same way. People do just the amount of work to get by so that they don't get fired, so that they still keep getting the paycheck.
So I'm guessing, just like society as a whole, we got to figure out a way to incentivize both students and those adults out in the world to begin adulting again, I guess.
Yeah,
ever adult.
Well, the incentives used to be you go to school, you get a degree, there's a job out there waiting for you. Now, you get to the end of your degree. Oh, did we stop recording? No, I still go. But you get to the end of your degree, in whatever field it is, even if it's some STEM class where it's engineering and math, they graduate, boom, no jobs.
Now that's probably a whole nother podcast in itself.
Most definitely.
But and I think we touched that on that in the second podcast. But what I'm getting at is is it that we have been not properly incentivizing? I mean, is for instance, your students, have you ever thought about doing a photo contest in your class?
I do that, and then you will have the people that do the bare minimum, the inner, and it's you're not turning in good work, you're not going to win. But they could actually couldn't care less if they won or not or placed.
So what is their motivation for being in the class?
It's an elective, and they have to take it.
Okay. What? Now let me ask you a question. Have you ever asked them what their major is?
I have, and I do. I start out that every semester. I asked every student, "What are you here for? What are you trying to learn?" And I've never had one that's like, "Oh, it's part of my degree," or it's an elective, and I like photography, and that's why I'm taking the class. And then I guess they're expecting cell phone photography. I don't know, but then they find out how expensive the class is, and I guess that sets them back. But they end up buying cameras anyway, and they're putting this big investment into it, and they just don't have the drive to go above and beyond. They want to do the bare minimum to get by.
Yeah, that's
I mean, every once in a while I will have that, I guess, call it diamond in the rough, where it's like they're going above and beyond and they're testing. And I had one student like that a couple semesters ago, and he was involved in art, but he wasn't photography. Like he wanted to work in sculpture and design. And he came to my class, and I worked with him, and he started, like, he had to borrow a camera from the school. Even the first assignment, the cell phone assignment, he didn't own a cell phone. He went out and bought a flip phone, throwaways that have a tiny little camera in it, and he made do with that. Like, this dude was trying. Lo and behold, I pestered him enough. He entered the school's student call for art contest. He won first, second, and third place, and jurors award. And
so I would say he had self-drive.
Yes, he had a lot of self-drive.
So I guess what we need to when do we need to I mean, it's.
And he made the decision, like, no, this is going to be my thing. And he was an older student, but I'm kind of, not throwing shade at him, but he grew up in a lower socioeconomic class. I mean, he grew up in the hood. Okay. But I guess he wanted to get out of that because he is.
But you said he's an older student, so that means
35.
Okay, so
I think.
So he was roughly our age back. I mean, this can only have been a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like he really grew up under our I guess generation. You should I mean, I guess he really did. But so the question is where does society go from here? I mean, I'm not a big person to say, do we need to have...
Well,
I mean, is society shame? I mean, we already have society shaming that's just completely run amok.
Well, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the shift is. I don't know what's going on. I mean, for one, I can tell you again, different podcasts we could go into, but the incentives aren't there, especially for the degrees. I think some students are doing it just to appease their parents because the parents keep pushing them, oh, you need a degree. And I think I even had one student that was saying, my parents are saying, you need to get a degree so you don't end up like me, a broken down blue collar worker. And it's like I've got a college degree and I work in a blue collar job. I mean, I'm a professor, but I also work in a blue collar job. Now that just happens to be the blue collar job at another art school.
But nonetheless, I mean, it still proves the point that a college degree doesn't even net you the benefits that it used to. In fact, in reality, most college degrees, you end up usually having to know somebody to get a foot in the door for an interview, and it's like,
again, so I don't know what the shift is happening. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening in industry where it's kind of starting to push out the standard, out of college worker because automation and a whole bunch of things is taking over. But what do we have to do to spur more growth? I mean, because like what we're doing here with this podcast, we're doing it for fun and for better, lack of better words, shits and giggles. But we're hoping that maybe it could add a little ad revenue along the line and it pay a bill or two here or there. Like, is it just we're at a point where we just have to diversify ourselves so much to get by?
Well, I think it's really honestly, I think most people need to find a niche in some kind of industry that appeals to them to where they can love what they do.
I don't know, man.
Well, like the saying goes, if you love what you do, you're never really at work.
Yeah, but the problem is almost now you have to have a job to do what that second thing you is. Because for me as a photographer and artist, I have to have these other jobs so that I can actually practice photography and make art.
Well, here's the other thing though is could it also be the decline, or what I would say is the potential decline of brick and mortar schools? I mean, you've got, like, for instance, I'm taking some classes that are online through Udacity and Coursera that basically net me certifications for those specific
did you say there was a term for that? Because we were kind of talking about this the other day. Micro degrees or macro degrees, or
well, now Udacity calls them nano degrees. Where they're degrees in specific. Like Coursera does specializations. So Coursera does you can get a specialization in leadership and strategic management, which is actually a specialization I'm actually enrolled in. Udacity does a lot of technical stuff, so you can actually through Udacity you can actually get a master's in computer science from Georgia Tech.
So it's a what's the word I'm looking for?
It's a MOAC, I believe, is what they call them.
Well, no, I mean the degree itself would be a accredited degrry. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, there's a certification. You can put it on your resume, your LinkedIn. It actually says that you can do that. Let me see. What was I?
And so he's looking up the proper vocabulary here, and he's still scrolling. But again, I guess that comes back to you have to diversify yourself and get all these accreditations and nano degrees to add up to anything so that you can actually find a job. So we're saying more school is the key when more school is what is actually the problem.
I think with the idea of the certifications, course specializations, and nano degrees, what it really boils down to is that you're getting a specified certification for a specific skill. But the cool thing about Udacity and Coursera is you actually build or you work on projects that show experience. So you get both experience and something you put on in your portfolio or on your resume, whichever your specialization you're going after.
So we're not turning this into a Coursera Udacity thing. My co-host here is just using them. We're getting no monetary gain from this.
No. Actually, I'm just plugging them in because those are two that I use.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that the certifications you can put on paper showing that you actually receive that bit of education, and then you have the projects that you do in those courses to show as your experience. So you have something tangible, which is the problem with brick and mortar 4-year colleges these days. You don't really have anything tangible because you sit in class, you learn about economics, you learn about history, you learn about this, you learn about that,
art, photography,
and you do projects. But a lot of people, it would seem, they cast shade on those projects because they're not real world projects. Even taking pictures. Oh well, that was just for your art class. What have you done on the side? What do you mean? Whatever. A picture's a picture. If it's a great picture, if it's a shitty picture, it's still a picture.
Yeah.
It's still a photo that I went out there in the world, whether it was for a class or not. But for some reason, a lot of companies don't want to see the experience you. But then They want experience. What is it that term you like to use? You used in the last pod?
It's we're looking for a virgin with 2 to 3 years of sexual experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, how do you?
Or there's that awesome meme where I get it's a school day, you know, where they do a field trip or whatever, and then it says it's like kindergartners, and it says when they want you to have 10 years experience before your 10th birthday.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you know, when are we going to finally recognize that? And you know what? And I think a lost art in the job world is you have a lot of, there's not enough focus on internal development. And I think that's something that we see even in schools, because here's the thing. How many kids do you think have a basic understanding of the civic process? You know, we stopped teaching civics in high school. I mean, I've very seldomly have I heard of high school students getting civics 101. Most kids nowadays, you ask them, how does a bill become a law? And they couldn't tell you. There's a whole Schoolhouse Rock video that can tell you how a bill becomes a law.
And now there's a meme. What is it? Lobbyist and money is how a bill is made now.
Yeah. You know, well, there's that. I think that Saturday Night Live skit that they did where they made fun of the whole bill becomes a law process, and then they called it an executive order. Executive order comes in and knocks the bill down. Anyway, but what I'm getting at
I get you.
is that we don't even develop our youth into the next future. We don't develop them into the
and I think that's a big problem with teaching to the test, which is a big problem, is that we don't get to expand. Well, I can't speak from a high school teacher's perspective, but I do have quite a few friends, and they're like, well, we can't expand beyond, or expound, whatever, beyond a certain amount of stuff, because at the end of the day, we have to get them prepped for this damn test that if they fail, we lose money.
I think standardized tests have a place in public schools as a measuring stick, but I don't think we should be testing to it or teaching to a test. I think what needs to be, and a buddy of mine, when we were in college, we were talking about this. We got into this really in-depth conversation one day about how there should be can you turn it down a little bit? Well, all I can hear is that. Anyway, so me and a buddy were having a in-depth conversation one day about how standardized tests have pretty much ruined the actual intellectual development of students, because teachers have been forced to teach to a test rather than teach a subject matter and allow the students to absorb that information and be able to just simply pass the test. And what we came up with this idea that what we think should happen is that you should have a delegation of teachers from every grade in every state. Say, let's take California, right? Okay, you grab, say, 200 teachers from each grade from California. Okay, and they meet in the state, and they somewhere in California, like say Sacramento, they go to the Capitol in Sacramento, and they all get in a room, and they come up with what California sees as a curriculum. Okay, and each state does this, and then from that 200 delegation, maybe in California, maybe here in Texas, we probably have the same amount, 200. But as your states, depending on the size of population, like you do a percentage of the population, right? Then out of those 200 or 300 teachers, they elect a delegation that goes to D.C. Okay, because what we need to think about is, because federal dollars goes towards schools. Okay, so the Fed needs to be satisfied to a point, and the states need to be satisfied to a point. So what happens is the delegation in the state comes up with the curriculum that the state believes should be taught. So if you're the fifth grade delegation, what you're actually going to be doing doing is producing the curriculum for fourth graders. Why? Because then you are developing the curriculum that they need to be ready for when they come to you. And the same thing, fourth grade delegation for the third grade curriculum, and so forth, so forth.
Well,
and then you go to the national, and then they come up with a national curriculum. Okay. Now, I'm not trying. Again, of course, I'm into federalism, so I'm not saying that the federal government guidelines, they need to be met, but that's not specifically so. You can add to it, but you can't subtract from it. And then what you do is you give the standardized test every 4 years. So there's only 3 tests that they'll ever take. They'll only ever take 3 tests. But here's the kicker: if they can't pass the test, they don't move on.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of the system it is now, but not really.
But the thing is, and here's another kicker: each state will have in its educational organization, it will actually have. They'll be the only ones that have access to the test. Teachers won't ever see the test. You can't photograph the test. You can't do anything if you're caught. Obviously, that should be some kind of state penalty or fine or whatever. And what each district gets is it's kind of like if there's going to be 200 questions on the test, each district gets a pamphlet of 400 possible questions.
Kind of like the prep test for the SATs or whatever.
And that's how we begin to.
Well, the other thing maybe is maybe we have to look at how students are taught now, because they're overstimulated. People want to say it's ADD. No, it's they can learn at such a faster rate, and we're saying, hey, come to this box, sit here, and have pains trying to get through it. Shorter class periods, or active, like have them up and doing stuff instead of just sitting there reciting stuff. Because this kind of goes to this thing I saw. It was this father, his student or his child had been causing a ruckus on the bus and had been acting up in class, and he took parenting, what you're supposed to do, and he made the kid run to school every morning for a mile, and then because the kid was too tired by the end of the run at school to act up, he actually became a better student, and his teachers said his marks improved greatly. Well,
I think you're touching on a nerve there too, because I think we over medicate our kids. A kid's got ADD or ADHD or whatever you want to call it.
Which those are made up. I mean, it's just for the pharmaceutical companies to.
Hey, I took Ritalin as a kid, and it made me a freaking zombie. But I think if you have, I think you can actually.
Hey, but schools,
I think schools as a whole. I mean, we want to talk about these administrators being properly trained, teachers properly trained to recognize students in a certain character sense. So you've got Tommy, and you've got Alice, and you've got Jimmy and Joanne, and all these are really active students. You can tell they're okay. So maybe what we need to do is start recognizing students have certain traits, and then maybe taking those very active students and putting them in a classroom all their own, and then developing a curriculum that allows them to be active. So every hour, maybe they get 20 minutes to go outside and just burn off energy.
There's this one school, I think it's in California, and kindergarten, like they are outside for like their school day, and it's like, oh, this is a tree, this is mud, and they're burning the energy. But I think through some metric they have seen that those kids are actually retaining more information and are less of a problem at the end of the day because they're out exploring and burning that energy off. Because now what? They're starting to get rid of PE and recesses at schools, and I think you see a level of ADD activity in schools go up because those kids are just forced to sit there and bottle it all up.
Wow. Well, I mean, why would you bottle that up? Because you're only going to make it harder for them to focus.
Again, teaching maybe has to change. Maybe there needs to be some real in-depth changes that go on in the education system other than standardized testing. You have to meet this
fire all
metric.
the administrators. let's just fire all the administrators.
Yeah, start over.
Well, I mean, it doesn't make any sense that these administrators don't do I mean, not to throw shade on any of the administrators out there in the world, but let's be honest. I mean, you know, students go to school to learn. They don't go to be administered over.
Yeah, and that's kind of what's happening.
And, you know, and here's the thing, dude. Name me one administrator that has revolutionized a school district that they've been in charge of or been a member of.
I couldn't tell you because I have never researched that, but that would be interesting to, for something to come up with that answer.
So, why are you snapping your finger?
Because you look like you were going off into Never Never Land.
Well, I mean, I was pondering, you know. It's
Ponder. Are you getting distracted by that TV in the background?
Yes, I am, because it's the new American Idol. I mean, hold on. Let me. Okay, Fox ended American Idol, and then ABC picked it back up. Now,
why? I don't know, because they could money.
But it's like recycle. I mean, is everything about recycling? Hollywood is all about recycling. I mean, Charles Bronson right now is probably flipping over because is Charles Bronson still alive?
I don't know. We'd have to let's IMDb that real quick. But yeah, I mean, redoing Death Wish, a classic, right?
Don't get me wrong though. I mean, they did pick a pretty good. I mean, they picked Bruce Willis to be.
Yeah, but to me, it just kind of feels like a.
He died 2003.
Okay, well, it feels that new Death Wish kind of feels like Die Hard number 30 or something.
Yeah. You know, I mean, you're just waiting for him to break out with a little yippee-ki-yay motherfucker.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But, you know, it's like, where's the originality? I mean,
well, that is a good question. Where is the originality? I guess it's because people are scared to take chances anymore. Because again, if it's not a good idea, it tanks. You get fired. So I guess it's just, hey, let's find something that used to be good and see if we can make it at least palatable again, so it makes some money.
Well, it's like how much recycling can we do? I mean, I think that's a problem with society as a whole. We're recycling everything. Damn liberals and they're recycling. Let's recycle this. Let's recycle that. I mean,
some recycling is good as long as it's not what's the word, like not overbearing. That's not the correct word.
Well, I mean, what is it that they say that it costs more money to recycle and it causes more damage to the environment through recycling plants than the actual benefit of the recycling? I mean, don't get me wrong.
But then some of the other problems is there are finite resources of some things, and if you don't recycle, we can't get them back.
Well, I mean, and I get that. And I don't want to, I feel really bad every time I see a duck with a 6-pack around its neck, but,
Yeah, well, that's packaging, and there's new packaging that prevents that. It actually biodegrades, or it's edible because it's made from a plant-based protein instead of a petroleum-based plastic. So that can actually break down and be eaten or whatever. What was it? Like they even make forks and disposable spoons and stuff out of sugar cane or something, or they used to. That used to be a thing.
I don't know, man. I don't. I still use a metal spoon. I wash it, put it, and then reuse it the next day for lunch. So.
Oh, because you're one of the few people who actually take their lunch to work.
I mean, you kind of have to these days just to economically survive. I mean, here's the other thing is just if I take my lunch, I get to decide what I'm putting in my body, and I know what I'm eating versus when I go to some fast food joint. Man, some of that stuff is just not good for you, and it just makes your day even worse.
No.
And
because I mean, they put sugar in everything, which is a big problem. They need to cut that out.
Oh God, here we go.
Well, no, I'm just saying.
You and I grew up with sugar and everything, and we're fine.
Are we? We're kind of husky right now. I think that's too much sugar because it's in everything. But my parents would also limit the amount of sugar, but they didn't have to worry about it being in bread and other things.
Of course, you and I grew up in a time where there was not iPads There was not iPhones. There was not TV like crazy. I mean, you know, I think it's
what is it? And that's the other thing. Young people can't focus. They have a TV on, they have an iPad going, they have their phone going, and they might even have a laptop going.
What is it? Didn't you take a picture of a student one time?
Oh Jesus!
Somewhere,
face like buried in a phone
in the middle of class while you're trying to teach.
Well, I was showing a documentary about some photographers, and yeah, her face is just buried down in there.
If you turn around and gave a pop quiz on that video, this girl would have flunked, would have failed miserably.
I think half my class would have failed. I think that was the only one that I could
get a shot.
But everybody else.
It's a great picture. By the way, it was a great picture.
Oh well, thank you. I try. I do have 2 degrees in it.
I mean, I thought it was well developed imagery.
Oh, ha, 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 ha.
But it's just it's getting back to the original topic of this is we all think that when we turn 18 we're adults, and yet we have people that are in their 40s that still can't adult. And where does society go from here? I mean, do we all need to sit down for a minute, hit the reset button, and realize that
the reset button would be that never mind. That would be advocating drug use, and I'm not going to do it.
I'm not so much like a reset on our lives. Do we need to sit? Are we at a point where maybe everybody needs to sit down and look at where they are now, look where they thought they would be? Go back to, think about when they were like 15 or 16 and where they thought they would be at this point, and realize that they didn't get there, and realize that they did this, or this, or did not do this, or this. I mean, with my degree, I should have never got a political science degree. Nothing against people with poli-sci degrees. I enjoyed the courses I took. But for me, it really didn't open the doors I thought it would. And, it's like, how do you know that in advance?
Well, I think it's maybe old models of thinking and doing, because again, a degree used to actually guarantee you a job. Like, you used to be able to, if you had a poli-sci degree, let's say, we don't even have to go that far back, but let's just say in the 1950s you have a degree, right? You can walk into some political campaign and be working along in a campaign. Or you could be some, I don't know all the jobs a poli-sci person is actually qualified to do, but like, you used to have something there. Or like in my field, if you used to get a degree in photography or art, you used to be able to go into a creative agency, and you would have a job starting out. Yeah, it would be an entry level job, but you could work your way up.
But it was but the degree was almost a guaranteed path towards success.
And now it's not.
But now, corporate America has caught on that just because you can get a degree does not mean you're going to be worth your salt in the world. And so now they want experience, but they want experience from somebody who's never had experience, but they want the education to go with that experience. Yeah. And it's like chicken or the egg. Which one comes first?
Or they want some stupid amount of experience, and it's like, but I'm, let's say a 35-year-old person who has 10 years and you're asking for 15, like, how is that possible? Or like, I'm always looking for different potential jobs for teaching, right? And because of the way everything is right now, is I can't get a full-time teaching position. I'm adjunct, or it's mostly adjunct, or maybe a temporary full-time if you're lucky. But to apply for these other jobs, they want you to have at least 4 years of full-time teaching experience. Well, I'm a great photographer. I'm a great teacher, but I can't escalate in my career because I'm held back because I can't get full-time teaching experience.
Hold on. So, I'm not to throw shade your way. You use the term "you're a great photographer." Now, but how do you define great to give yourself that?
I have
status.
I have at least 2 degrees in it, and I have international and nationally been shown in galleries and shows and published internationally. So I have all these metrics that say I'm at least a good artist, good photographer. But I'm going to say great, because aren't we all a little? Hey, I'm better at this, and a little cocky and arrogant?
Well, I mean, it's just for what you define as great, I may not define as great, and I guess that's where I'm going with the whole that term in itself is very subjective, and
well, yes and no. But if you were to compare my students' work to my work,
yeah, but I would never expect a student to be on the level of a professor. So
okay, well, you could look up my portraiture work and compare that to other top level portrait photographers or artists, and you would see that my work is within the same caliber and same I don't want to say style, but it's in the, like, if you look at the quality of my work and how I understand and can do things versus other people's work, you would see that I am in, I guess, that strata. Again, that's me being a little more egocentrical or egoist about my own stuff. But
I mean, I'm not trying to put you in a spot. I didn't flip you off. No, I didn't. No, I did not flip you off. My wife thinks I flipped her off now. You might as well. She walks past here, gives us. Okay, so she gives us a 20-minute. Yeah, she says 20 minutes because apparently The Walking Dead comes on in 20 minutes, and so
I gotta get out of here in 20 minutes too. So let's I guess 15 more minutes and
yeah, we'll probably wrap this up. But getting back to I mean, I think your stuff is great, but that's my subjective level, and I think I think I'm good at what I do, but I'm also my own. We're always our worst critic, so. It's how do you translate that into I believe I'm a great at this and this, but you turn around and you look at how
I can also say that I'm great at it, but I'm also always constantly learning. And if somebody comes along that is what I guess would be subjectively better than me, I go, God damn, you're pretty good. I like what you're doing.
And then that drives you to be better, right?
Exactly.
To develop more.
Yeah.
And I think it's where I was getting at is that me, I'm always looking for opportunities to transition or change or grow. And for me, what I found in society and both in the corporate world is I like to I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase, champions of change.
Champions of change.
From where I work at my job, in that large umbrella of a company, which I still believe it's a great company. It has all the makings of a great company, has the ability to revolutionize the world. It's revolutionized the world every day for the most part, but we have this thing about champions of change where we are looking for people to drive change. The only problem, and I see this in other companies too, so it's not just
I see it. I guess it's maybe the same thing, but as soon as you think outside the box, do something different to push something forward, they say, "Hey, where are you going with that?"
Well, I've come up with this new title, and I think corporate America as a whole, not any specific company, but I think you have what I call now charlatans of change, where you have those individuals that speak change, preach change, let's do this, let's drive change, and the last thing they want to really do is drive change. They're not innovators. They're not innovative, and our developing society is not about innovation. I mean, let's talk about free speech. What is free speech? You take certain individuals who scream at the top of their lungs about free speech and people should be able to say what they want as long as that speech is something they agree with. But the minute they don't agree with it, they call it hate speech.
Again, doesn't that kind of go back to that Evergreen State fiasco?
Well, I think to be honest with you, I think what happened with Brett Weinstein. Wait.
No, it's the one that's not like the producer guy. So.
Yeah. Sorry, Brett, if we just butchered your last name there. I want to say it's Weinstein.
No, I think it's Weinstein.
No, I think isn't it Harvey Weinstein is the.
You know what? That people can look it up. It's out there.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, or you can just go, listen to Joe Rogan's podcast with Brett Weinstein. It's Weinstein. It is because
is it Weinstein?
Yeah, because because Joe was very, very adamant. Like, he kept saying it over and over again because he kept messing it up too. So anyway, but I think with Brett Weinstein, his was a miscommunication, and that turned into, you're right, I don't like your speech, so your speech is hate speech, or is, and let's just talk about the provocateurs for a second. Like, what's it, Milo Yiannopoulos? Like, he's a provocateur. Like, and then when, you know, he did inadvertently cross a line where it did suffer great consequences. But yes, he, you know, when he was speaking, just because he had a different view of something, people automatically were like, you know, you can't speak here, you can't do that. And, you know, free speech is, you know, it's a double-lane road, two-lane road, double-edged sword, I would say. Yeah, because it's like, if them and it can cut you. Yeah, as long as it's not hate speech, which I don't think Milo, I don't think it was necessarily hate speech. I think it's just trying to be provocative, and he knew what to say to rile people up. Well, let me ask you this: if it's like a belief structure. If you believe in what you're saying wholeheartedly, my speech can't change that. And I think what Milo tries to do is he is a provocateur, you're right. But what he's ultimately trying to do is for those individuals that aren't solidified in what the opposition to him. Well, if they're not, then he's giving them the opportunity to question. Because to me, I think that if you, like, for instance, we can go back just 10 years ago. Yeah. All right. How staunch of a Republican was I? Like, you were pretty crazy staunch. I mean, I was like, you know, I bled oil. Okay. You know, I mean, but I don't think it's fair to call you. Well, I guess that's what you're getting to now. You're not a staunch Republican. I've embraced opposite viewpoints to such a level that I don't see the world as black and white as I did when I was a staunch Republican. Well, because you always used to make fun of me that I was like this diehard liberal, but I think what we've you're wearing Jesus sandals. I'm not. Fuck off. But I think the thing is, what we've learned is that we're actually middle of the road, and we just have slight leanings to one side. Because, like, I'm all about free speech, I'm all about Second Amendment gun rights, I'm all about all this other stuff, but I also am about, you know, hey, let's try to fix this education system fiasco. Let's try to figure out this healthcare thing. I think where we have developed a little bit more is that we both understand that there's not an A solution for a problem. There is a B, a C, a D, maybe even an E solution for a problem. We have 26 letters of the alphabet, right? Exactly, and we can have 26 different solutions, and maybe we throw out some of those solutions because they're just not going to work. No. But we can come together. The thing is, you know, as a society, we need to develop our interaction a little bit more, which with kids nowadays, the up and coming generation, with their face being glued into the social media, and that's where their interaction with other people are, and they're not going to. And text messaging, because what is it? You can have 5 kids in a room and they're all texting each other instead of actually talking. And then they lose that ability to actually have social interaction. And with that, you get all these young individuals who are idealists. They really want to make the world a better place. The problem is their utopia is not what they really believe it to be. Because they don't want to listen to other people's solutions. It's me, mine, me. Well, it's like you and I can going back to the whole NFL players kneeling thing. Think about that for a minute. You and I have total stark opposite reactions to that. Well, actually, I don't want to say reactions. I want to say observations. Yes. But we both react the same. We both don't think it's disrespectful to the flag, correct? But our observation is you see what they're doing from this perspective, and I see it from a different perspective, but we both see it as a distraction. Or am I incorrect there?
Well, I kind of yes and kind of no, because I don't think it was. Well, again, this could go into a whole nother. We don't have time for that debate. Maybe we'll pick up that on next podcast. But what I believe is that I don't think it is as. I mean, it's an issue, but it's that 24-hour news cycle making it more than what it is about. And they kind of shifted the narrative. But again, this is a whole nother podcast. But I do believe that, it's freedom of speech. But yes, when you're at work.
You know what? I think that should be the next topic. Freedom of speech and where it's going.
Well, because I know you had an interesting take on it too, because you didn't like that, but you would have... I might be misremembering this. You can stop me if it is. But you said that if Colin Kaepernick would have stood outside the stadium and burned a flag, that you could have possibly been more behind that than kneeling? Or was that not you? I swear there was a conversation I had with you about something like that.
Well, okay. So,
and if I'm misremembering, you can just tell me I'm full of shit. But
no, you're not. You're not misremembering. But I think that's we can probably pick that one up
because that is a big topic, right?
I think we can. I think we can definitely. I think that conversation can really develop into something, and I think free speech is something we should discuss, but probably not today.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough time. That would turn into like a 5-hour podcast or something.
Yes, the wife is glaring. We're definitely getting that look. So,
all right. Well, what is it? We got centrally biased. Well, the website's not up yet. It'll eventually get there, but we have the centrally biased Twitter.
Facebook. We have Facebook,
Twitter, Instagram. Yeah. We even have email, centrallybiasedgmail.com. Shoot us questions, comments, concerns. I mean, I can just hear now.
Topics. What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't be online all day, every second. So there's obviously something out there. We'd love to get your take and maybe even give our take.
Because I have 2 jobs.
and I've got one that operates like 2. So, well, we'll see you guys. Well, we'll catch you
gals, pan-gender, whatever. Your stepdaughter said something about pansexuals. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
So we will catch y'all on the flip side.
All right.